Daf Lamed Hey Amud Beis, right at the top of the Amud at the two dots. Yotzim Demai v'Maisa, and the Mishnah said you can be Yotze with matzah that's made out of flour from Demai. Demai, how could you be Yotze? He's not allowed to eat it. How can he be Yotze the Chiyuv of matzah with flour that's made out of produce that was Demai, that was purchased from an Amaretz? And therefore we have a shaila safik. Did he take the maisers? It's lechaze. It's aser ba'achila. Our answer is it's not categorically aser. He potentially could eat this because if he's mafkir nechas and he makes himself into a poor person, he would be mutter to be an ani, a poor person, and it would be mutter for him to eat the demai. So it's considered to be something that's roy lachila, that's fit for consumption, because he, under certain circumstances, could eat it. This nan we learned in the Mishnah, machilan esanim demai. You can feed demai to the poor, vesachsanya demai, and to traveling soldiers you can also feed them demai. Rashi says these are soldiers who are yidden. Taisa brings down the Yerushalmi that says they're nachrim. But you could feed aniyim and achsan demai. Va'amar Rav Huna tzana. We learned in the Brayis Beisham ein machlenes anim demai v'sachsan demai ubeis Hillel oimrim machila. But Beis Hillel says you can. So therefore, it's not considered something that's not roy. Then the Mishnah said you can also be yotze yochiv with matzah that's made from flour, which is ma'aser rishon shenidl trumos. If it was made with matzah that from produce of ma'aser rishon, where the truma was removed from it, was separated. Well, if you had the truma was taken from it, meaning the trumas ma'aser, the Yisrael gave the ma'aser rishon to the Levi, and the Levi, he has an obligation to be mafresh trumas ma'aser. A tenth of that, he has to give it to a kain. Well, once that's done, it's regular, it's considered regular produce. Therefore, the flour is chul and it's mutter to anybody. So what's the chiddush? Of course, you can be yotze with matzah that's made out of that. Gemara says, lo yitzricha she'ekdima b'shibon. What we're talking about over here is a unique kind of case where the trumas ma'aser was given, but truma gedola was not given. First, what should be done is truma gedola is given to the kohen. And then from the remainder of that, so for instance, let's say 2% is given to the kohen. If there's 100 bushels, 98 are left, then 10% of that is given to the Levi. That's 9.8. And from that, the Levi gives trumas ma'aser a tenth, he gives to the kohen. And what we're talking about over here is that this is unprocessed. It was in the stage where it was unprocessed, where the grain was in the stage where it was shibalin. It was in the ears, meaning it was not processed and it didn't have miruch bakri. So therefore, there was not yet chal on it a chiyuv of truma. Now at that stage, before truma was given, the Yisrael gave the ma'aser rishon to the Levi. So now the Levi has the full 10% of it. He has instead of 9.8, he has 10. He has a full 10%. Truma gedola was not given. And then the Levi gave a 10% of that to the kohen as trumas ma'aser. So v'nitla meant trumas ma'aser, v'nitla meant truma gedola, and truma gedola was never taken. Okay, Rabavo. And it's going with the shita of Rabavo that even though the truma gedola was not taken, but in this case, in this scenario, it would be mutter. It's not tevel. Dama Rabavo Amar Rav Shem ben Lakish ma'aser rishon shekdim v'shibolim. If you have ma'aser rishon, where it was in the shibolim stage, and the ma'aser rishon was given and truma was not yet given, pater mit truma gedola, then the chiyuv of truma gedola never comes upon it. So there is no chiyuv of giving truma gedola anymore. Shenemar, because the pasuk says, "Hare ma'aser menu trumas Hashem, ma'aser menu ma'aser." It says that you take the trumas Hashem. You have to take the trumas ma'aser, ma'aser menu ma'aser. You have to take trumas Hashem, ma'aser menu ma'aser. You take trumas ma'aser, a tenth from the ma'aser. Meiser min meiser matel. So what you take is meiser min meiser. You take trumas meiser from the meiser rishon. But v'loy truma gedoyla trumas meiser min meiser. You only take trumas meiser, but you don't take both truma gedoyla and trumas meiser. So in this case over here, where the meiser was given to the Levi and truma gedoyla was not yet taken, there is no chiyuv anymore. There's no chiyuv to take the truma gedoyla. It's only trumas meiser that's taken from the meiser, and not both trumas meiser and truma gedoyla. Omer Rav Papa Abaye said to Melmelt, if that's the case, I feel like they bakri namili potter. Why is that dafke if it's in the shibolim stage? Why is it dafke? It's in the stage where it was only in the shibolim. Why not even when it was in the case where it was the miruach was finished and it was in the kri, it was in the pile, and they finished smoothing it and processing? Why don't we say the same drasha and say even there, even at that stage, if the Meiser Rishon was given without giving the Truma Gedoyla, that there's a Ptur on Truma Gedoyla. Omer Le, he said, Allah Amar Kro, to respond to what you're saying, the Torah says, Mikol Matnei Sechem Tarim as called Trumas Hashem. It says, Mikol Matnei Sechem, you have to give Truma. So you have to give Truma from everything, even from the Meiser Rishon. You also have to give Truma Gedoyla. So there's a riboy to be marva. In any case, in any event, you have to give Truma Gedoyla. Umarai, so we're machalik. So we're saying there's a difference. There's a difference if it's in the shibolim stage, or it's a chilik if it's in after the miruach in the stage of the kri. If it's in the shibolim stage where it's in the ears, then you say then there's a ptur from Truma Gedoyla. But if it's in the case where it's already miruach, it's in the stage of the kri in the pile, then you're chayv. So why are we mechalik this way? Maybe the other way. More answers high idgin in the case where you're in the kri, it's already became dogan. It's finished grain. And the Torah says, it says that the rashis degoncha, you give the truma from rashis degoncha. So this is dogan. So the chiyuv of truma is already chal on it. Once it's in the kri, there's a chiyuv of truma is already chal, doesn't go off. V'hai lo idgin. But in the case where it's in the shibolim in the ears, it did not yet become dogon, so therefore the chiyuv of truma was not yet chal. If it was not yet chal, it is not chal. It will not be chal later. But once it's chal already, it's in the stage of the kri, it's already chal, it doesn't go off. Then the Mishnah continues, says, Meiser Sheni v'hektish niftu. If you're paid to the Meiser Sheni and hektish, you make matzah out of that produce, then you can be yotze your chiv of matzah, like more pshita. Or once you're be paided, once a niftu, it's like chulin. So pasha. More answers halcha mayaskina and shenosan as a keren v'leinosan as a chayir. She were paided, but not completely. You gave the principal amount, but when you're paided, meiser sheni and hektish, you have to add on a fifth, which he did not do. So he did not yet give the fifth. But Kamash Malan, then Chaimish Ma'akev. It's coming to teach you that the Chaimish is not Ma'akev, so the pigeon is still considered a valid pigeon. And therefore, you can be Yotze with this for your Chiv of Matzah. It's already Yotze L'chulin, and you can be Yotze your Mitzvah Matzah with this. So when it means the Niftu, it means it's Niftu, but not completely. But nevertheless, the pigeon is Chal. Kahanim B'chalav Truma, Kahanim can be Yotze, the Chiv of Matzah, with challah or truma. Affecting more pshita, well, of course, it's davar pashat. Once they're kahanim, so this is what's mutter to them. To them, challah and truma is mutter. It's mutter, davar that's mutter. So what's the chiddush that they can be yotzeh? It's a davar that's mutter. There's no issue to them. So ma'odasemi, you might think matzah shavel chol adam b'ina. You might think that something that's mutter has to be mutter for everybody. It has to be matzah that anybody and everybody can eat it, not only kahanim. Kamash malan, matzah riba. It says the word matzah several times in the Torah, and there's to teach you that it's matzah is riba. It's marba that even this case of truma or challah to a kohen, even though it's not mutter to other people, it's mutter to them. So therefore, you can be yotzeh. But you cannot be yotzeh with tevel. Pshita, of course, you can't be yotzeh with tevel. It's also ba'achila. Like Tzricha, the Gemara says, but tevel tavel midrabana. We're talking about not tevel d'oraisa, so we're talking about tevel d'rabana. Shezora ba'atzit sheina nakav. that was planted in a pot that was not perforated. It didn't have a hole. So therefore, it's not considered to be mechuber lekarka. It's not considered to be connected to the karka, and therefore midaraisa, it's not considered to be tevel. Midaraisa, there's no chiyuv of hafrashas trumas and maasros. So minatayra, even though there's no hafrasha, it's not considered tevel daraisa. Rabbanan, the Rabbanan mechayev in the hafrasha, even in such a case where it's an otzid she'ein anok. So you might have thought, since there's no Isser Doraisa, you could be Yaitza with this, Kamash Malan, even though the Isser is only the Rabbanan, you cannot be Yaitza with this Yerchiv of Matzah. And you cannot be Yaitza with Maisarishan where the Trumas Maiser was not removed from it, was not separated. In fact, the more Pshita, well, of course, if you didn't remove the Trumas Maiser, it's also La'achila. More says, Loi Tzricha, it's now the corollary of the previous case that we mentioned before, Shekdima Bakri. What it's talking about is over here is in a case where the Ekdima Bakri, that in the case of it was already processed, it was now in the pile, and the Truma was not given, and was given the Maisarishan to the lady. So what it means over here was that he did take the Trumas Meiser, but when it says Shaloi Nitla Trumasai, what it means Shaloi Nitla Trumasai means Truma Gedola was not given. Mao the same you might have thought. Kedam Relay Rapapa Labai, like Rapapa suggested to Abai, that over here, that in such a case, perhaps also there's no chiyuv of Truma Gedola because the Maisarishan was already given. Kamashman Kedushanalei, like the answer that was given, that no, that's only in a case where it's in the Shibolim, but not in the case of the Kri, and therefore you cannot be Yaitzer Chiyuv of Matzah with produce of this type of produce. And similarly, if you're not paid to the Meiser Shein in Hekdesh, you cannot use this for the matzah. Pshita, well, of course, if you aren't paid it, then it's also, of course you can't use it for matzah. More answer, Loilam de Nifta. When it says Shaloi Nifta, it doesn't mean that it was no pigeon at all. There was a pigeon. Loilam de Nifta. My Loi Nifta, when it says Loi Nifta, what does it mean? Shaloi Nifta, Kel Chosan. There was not a pigeon done in the proper way. What's that? Meiser Shein Shaparol Gabi Sima. By Meiser Tasheni, we're talking about a case where he did pigeon, but he was paid not on a minted coin, but on a slug. So it had a metal value, but it was not a minted coin. And the Torah says by Meiser Tasheni, when you're paid, it says when you take you're paid and you take the money to Yerushalayim, it has to be kesef that has a tzura that's minted. So the pigeon has to be dafk on a minted coin. The Rahman Amr v'tzata kesef, davar sheyesh l'tzura, that has an image, it's minted, and therefore, even though he was paid, but it's not valid. So therefore, you cannot be yaitzer yechiv with matzah with this. Behektish shechilul gabi karka, and by hektish in a case where he redeemed it with karka. The Rahman Amr v'nosana kesef v'kamlai, but you can't use karka. So that's what it means. There was a pigeon, but v'shloi kil chasan. You might have thought that a person could be yaitze his chiyuv with matzah that's made out of tevel, where they do not remove the meisers, the trim of the meisers. So, frankly, more, what do you mean tevel shaloi niskan? Kol tevel nami aloi niskan. Tevel by definition means it's loy niskan. It was not. You wouldn't mafish the trim of some meisers. So it wasn't fixed. Ella, what does it mean is, Ella v'tevel shaloi niskan kol tzar. Means to say is you might think that you can be yaitzer with tevel that was not completely niskan. Partially, yes, but not completely. Meaning, an example would be where Truma Gedola was taken, but the Trumas Meiser was not taken. Meiser Rishon v'loy Meiser Sheni. Perhaps Meiser Sheni, but Meiser Sheni wasn't given. Meiser Oni Minayan. So how do you know you can't be Yaitza unless it's completely niskan? All of your chiyuvim were done, and it's completely niskan, completely fixed. Minayan Tam v'loy Mer Leisayich Alav Chometz. The Torah says, don't eat with the Korban Pesach, chometz. 7 days you eat matzah. So you have to eat matzah. So mi she'isur mishum bal toich alav chometz. on the type of grain where there's an isra of chometz, that's what you can be yotze with matzah. That's when it says shivas yomim that you eat matzah. That type of grain where there's an isra of chometz. But yotze zeh, which is excludes this type of a case, she'ein isra mishum bal toichel chometz el mishum bal toichel tevel, where the isra is bal toichel tevel, not chometz. So that you can't be yotze with that type of a matzah. For example, the chometz lahechan asla. Well, what happened to the Yisr of Chometz? Did it disappear? Where did it go? I mean, it also has Chometz over here. Yes, it's Tevel, but what happened to the Yisr of Chometz? Rav Sheshes, Hamani, Rabbi Shimon, who is the town over here? It's Rabbi Shimon, the Amar, Ein Isra Halal Isser. Rabbi Shimon holds Ein Isra Halal Isser. So something which is Tevel, it's awesome. It's already awesome. So before it can become Chometz, as soon as you harvest, it's the Isra of Tevel is Chal. Before it is Chometz, it already has an Isra of Tevel. So the Chometz is not Chal on it, on the pre-existing Isra of Tevel. So therefore there's ein Isra Chal Isra. There's no Isra of Chometz over here, and therefore you cannot be Yotze Yechiv of Matzah. The Sanya we learn the Brisa, the Rav Shimon Oimer. Rav Shimon says, "Ha'oichel nevela b'Yom Kippur potter." If a person eats nevela on Yom Kippur, then he's potter for achil on Yom Kippur. Why is he potter on achil on Yom Kippur? Because before Yom Kippur came, and before the Isser of Yom Kippur could be chal on this, it already had an Isser of nevela. Ein Isser chal al Isser. One Isser, a second Isser is not chal on a pre-existing Isser. So therefore, the Isser of Yom Kippur cannot be chal on nevela. So Rashi says, either we're talking where that it became a nevela before Yom Kippur, so Yom Kippur can't be chal nevela, or if it became a nevela on Yom Kippur, it's still not chal because there was a pre-existing yisur of Eiver Min HaChai. So therefore, it wouldn't be a chal on that. He says not quite Eiver Min HaChai. He says that there would be an yisur of Eina Zavuach, because he says the Isser of Eiver Min HaChai already falls off, that once the animal dies, it falls off the Isser of Eiver Min HaChai, but he says the Isser of Eina Zavuach still remains. Nevertheless, we see over here that Rav Shimon says Ein Yisr Chal or Isser, so that's what we mean over here. Therefore, the Isser of a Chometz cannot be Chal on the Tevel, and therefore you can't be Yotze Matzah with his. Ravina Omar, he says, if you you can even say it's going to the Rabbana, because you could say Mishi Yisur Mishum Baal Toichel Chometz Bilvad, where there's only an Isser of Baal Toichel Chometz. Now, even if you say Isser Chalal Isser, even if you say like the Rabbana that Isser is Chalal Isser, but over here you have, in addition to the Isser of Chometz, you have Tevel. And where can you be Yotze? What can you be Yotze Matzah with? Where the only Isser is Chometz, nothing else. Yatzazeh, Shein Yisur Mishum Baal Toichel Chometz Bilvad, El Mishum Baal Toichel Tevel. So therefore, you can't be Yotze. For Gemara, so Midi Bilvad Ksiv, it doesn't say that the only Isser is Baal Toichel Chometz. It says only on something can only be Yotze Matzah with something where there is an Isser of Baal Toichel Chometz, but not that it's necessarily the only Isser. That it going to the sheet of Reb Shimon, and Ein Yisr Halal Isser, and therefore on Tevel there will be no Isser of Chometz, and therefore you cannot be Yotze Yechiv of Matzah with this. Taisus in Sukkah asks the Kasha, why do we need the special limud over here that they only where there's an Isser of can be only Yotze where there's only an Isser of Chometz and no other Isser? Why don't is it in the Dover Pashut that you can't be Yotze with Tevel or things of that nature? Because it's a mitzvah Bal Ba'avera. It's a mitzvah Bal Ba'avera. So why do we need a special limud over here to say that it's excluded because it's only something where the Isser is Bal Toichel Chometz and not Bal Toichel Tevel? Rav Chanan suggests perhaps we could be saying, and even the case is, the Chiddush is, even in the case where this matzah is made out of, let's say, half a zayas of chulin and a half a zayas of tevel, and therefore there's no shiur of tevel, and even if you hold chatzi shiur also from Torah, but there won't be misa for this, And therefore, in such a case, we would say that if that's the only matzah he has, that we would say, rather than not be yotzeh the mitzvah at all, we would say that the chiyuv of matzah would be doicha this, if it's only a half a kazayas of tevel. But now that we have this limud, and you would say, though, even if al mitzvah ba'aver, that would not prevent you from being yotzeh with this matzah. That in such a case, then mitzvah ba'aver would not tell you that you can't be yotzeh with this, but the limud of mishe ein yisur mishum ba'al toichal chometz, that would teach you that you can't be yotzeh with this. So you have a riba even in such a case.